thought that's what he was worried about. You know?
All right, you're live.
I'd like to call to order a special meeting of the Board of Finance for the Town of Somers on April 1st, 2024. Given the date, I don't think that anything said here tonight has any effect. It's all going to be taken with a grain of salt. But we have members present: Paul Hart, Joe Talisano, Kathy Devlin, Bill Salka, and Mike Parker, and our two financial gurus, Brian Wissinger and Mike Marinaccio. The first item for discussion, further action, further comment from the Board of Selectmen. I noticed that Tim Keeney is in the crowd. Do you have anything further, Tim?
No, I don't. Sure.
Thank you very much.
Brian Wissinger can.
Yeah, I'll just update you on this.
We're reducing some $73,000.
Yeah, Tim and I went through the budget, made some adjustments to our health insurance line based on future potential population, and also reduced the volunteer recruitment number that was 30,000 down to 20,000. So it's total cuts to the town budget of $73,821. Makes it a 2.56% increase for $8,939,357. $939,357.
Okay. Any comment? Board of Ed, any further comments, thoughts, considerations before we?
Yes. Do I come up or?
Yeah, sure. Please do.
So I appreciate the opportunity to meet last week, and we took your feedback, and we have met multiple times in trying to first present reductions to our Board of Ed, which we did just prior to this meeting, and I'll talk about right now. So based on where we are right now, there are 3 lines we can reduce. It is the unemployment line, the benefits line, and we talked, when we first presented our budget, we talked about the $115,000 indoor air quality assessment. It is our thought and recommendation that we can pull that out because the state might delay the requirement for that. And based on the spirit of our conversation a week ago, that's something that perhaps we could come back to the Board of Finance if we no longer have room to either delay or it's a must do. Those reductions amount to $215,000 for a budget reduction percentage of 5.70 off of the 6.48 that was first proposed. Dollar amount of $28,973,833.
I have a question for you, Doctor. Given the fact that we're about to spend several millions of dollars on the HVAC system, I think is a rather accurate statement, right? It may not all come from town coffers, but from grants. Isn't it reasonable to go to the authorities that are suggesting you have this $100,000 study done and say, wouldn't it be best if we did this after we revamped the entire system?
So the indoor air quality and HVAC assessments have to be done on all school buildings in the district, not just the elementary school. The indoor air quality is supposed to be done in 2024 on all 3 buildings annually as of the legislation that's written today. And the HVAC is every 5 years with the first assessment as the bill is written right now by 2025, January 1st, 2025, of all buildings. whether that's the elementary school or the middle and high school, which both have HVAC units in them. So the elementary school is only a small piece of what's required by the state as it stands right now. Legislation has been proposed to have a study, a working group created at the state level to discuss the indoor air quality requirements that the state has mandated at this point. So I suspect that it will be delayed. We're taking a risk in delaying it. The funding, if they don't end up pulling that into that language. But it's not just the elementary school that has to be evaluated.
But it's an unfunded mandate, right?
Correct.
At 135,000.
115,000 is what our two estimates are at right now. And that's what a lot of districts are pushing back on
How's Hartford
is
going to handle that?
how do you get all of these schools done in a certain time frame? How do you find qualified people to even do the work? Because the state hasn't provided any guidance on what is considered a qualified provider of this service. So it is what a lot of districts have been wrestling with, and why I think that the way that it's being proposed now, it'll probably be pushed back again. Yeah.
Okay.
The indoor air quality has not been pushed back as far as the date in previous years. HVAC has. So originally it was supposed to be done by this January 1st. They pushed that back to January 1st, 2025. I suspect with this working group to discuss indoor air quality, it will be pushed back further, and there will be, the proposed is that the HVAC will be a phase-in over 5 years. You have to have 20% of your schools done each year and throughout the next 5
It's a little
years.
more palatable.
Right. That's the language that's being proposed currently.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Anything further to add, Doctor?
No, I just want the board to know that we heard you last week, and you said that at another time to come back to the board, and that factored into a lot of our conversations on what we felt would be an appropriate reduction without impacting student services. So thank you for at least opening the door to that last week.
What about you didn't mention anything about the coming back for special authorization for special ed tuition?
That is a very hard discussion to have because it opens us up to being asked questions that we cannot legally respond to. We can't discuss student
Like we're talking about
information.
one student
Right.
possibly in a public meeting, which is, it was appropriate to respond to questioning last week, but I think it creates exposure for us if we start to really discuss the details pertaining to one student.
We're not going to discuss, nor is it our intention to discuss details of a student's diagnosis or what your treatment plan for him is or anything else. It's a question of how we deal with that appropriation.
Our concern is the dollar amount that would have to go to a town meeting for a vote.
That could be
It'll be more than $20,000.
could be tied to or linked to a particular student.
I don't understand. I hear what you're saying, and I understand the concern, and I would be the last one to want to have anything exposed about a particular student that wasn't, that was not supposed to be disclosed, right? I just find it difficult to be appropriating funds for which we cannot ever reduce for a cost item that fluctuates. We have no way of understanding why it fluctuates.
We did talk about the kids that are budgeted for are outplaced. They are currently outplaced.
Yeah, I know, but they're not outplaced for eternity. They graduate, they pass along
Correct.
at some point
And
out of the system.
So that is correct. And when we have a 12th grader or someone that leaves, we do account for that reduction. I have accounted for that reduction in past years.
It doesn't appear so, but I'm sure you have. I don't doubt what you say, okay? I don't doubt what you say. It just doesn't appear so.
We don't have any 12th graders this year, going into 12th grade next year. I do expect at least one the following year. Now, whether they will age out, most of those students stay on until they're 23 because we are legally mandated to educate them through their 22nd year of birth through the end of the school year. They may be 18, they may be not in 12th grade anymore, but we have to continue them potentially in that outplacement if it's appropriate.
Right.
So you may not see a reduction of a 12th grader for 4 more years past their
No,
18th
I mean,
birthday.
that's understandable.
But if
you
I
would
can
see,
reduce, I
you
would.
You would at some point see a change in the population of kids in that group.
Potentially, unless you have a younger kid take their place. But yes, if a 12th grader leaves or moves out of district, we had an outplacement move out of district. Often there is an outplacement just waiting for them, and then we don't realize the savings. But it's cost neutral, you hope.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still short of our goal of $350,000 reduction. And you're saying that this is your best and last effort for us. Is that correct?
I'm saying based on a week ago, moving from 0 to 215,000 is substantial. And any further cuts would impact staffing and/or programming.
What is the number of grant dollars that are associated with this year's proposal? I mean, there's no dollar amount
Like
set.
what we move from a grant into the operating budget.
No, what the total grant numbers are.
So this current year, between federal and state grants, we received $883,000, just over $883,000. Next year, we expect $692,000. So that's a difference of $190,000 less that we are receiving in grant funding next year.
And how does that? How do those extra? I don't want to call them extra dollars. I suppose there are no extra dollars. But how do those dollars affect the budget this year?
So there's a few things that came into our operating budget. There's a special, not a special ed teacher, a classroom teacher that has come into our budget from ARP. There are reading materials. We are mandated to have a new reading program. We have paid for $44,000 out of a grant that was given to us for that direct source. Next year, we have to pay approximately another $60,000 for that reading program. So those two things are the biggest items that have come in. In previous years, grant dollars, specifically ARP, which is the majority of what we're losing is the ARP funding, were spent on one-time expenses. Professional development, there's a retirement payout that we have always planned to pay for out of the ARP dollars. We've taken that out of our budget, so there's no retirement payout in the operating budget for next year. So that's the majority of what's come in to the operating budget.
I guess what is in the gray area here is how much of those grant funds could reduce budgeted costs.
0, because you cannot use grant dollars to supplant your budget, which means that you can't take something that's already been budgeted and paid for out of your operating budget, reduce that, and move it into a grant. Grants are intended to supplement your program and enhance it, and so that would be a direct violation of federal and state statute to use grant funding to reduce your operating budget for something that we've already paid for. So like I can't take a
That's
teacher,
okay.
right, you can't take a teacher that you've budgeted for and paid for in the past, like a special ed teacher, and then cut them out of your budget and then put them in your IDEA grant, a federal grant, and say, we reduced our operating budget because we're going to pay for it out of the grant.
But here tonight, we're talking about future things that have not yet been paid for, right? And which could theoretically be.
I guess it depends on what we would theoretically pull out of a operating budget that I don't know where we would pull.
Depends on what the grant is, right? So, yeah.
I mean, I assume some grants are limited by certain conditions.
That's
Others
true.
may be more is subject to interpretation as to what they can be used for. Right?
There's very
You would know.
There's very little that we are not bound by. IDEA is strictly special ed related. Title is for various enrichment grants and for disadvantaged students or professional development. ARP is going away. Choice is for our open choice program with Hartford students. Our grants have specific reasons.
Things like professional development, however, seem rather broad-based, right?
It's a relatively small grant that we can use for professional development. It's about $20,000.
It's,
And it's still, if it's something that we paid for in the past, we can't reduce that line down to zero and then say we're going to pay for it with a grant.
I understand. I'm talking about going forward, however.
I understand.
Anything further?
Yeah, I just have to ask you this. So if you have 18% is discretionary funds, that's about 5.2 million. If you take tuition out of that, that leaves you around 4.4 million. You can't find $135,000 in 4.4 million.
I'll say again,
Okay. No, you don't
a
have to.
further cut is staffing
You're
the program.
you're gonna put people on the street, is what you're telling me.
When I approached you a week ago, there were two goals. Any further cut is staffing or programming. Those are the two choices.
Programming.
There are two choices.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. I just, yeah.
Anything further? I have some difficulty following the notion that we're at such, with the size of your budget, the few dollars that we're asking you to reduce can't be found in that kind of a budget. I have difficulty accepting it. It's not that I have hard and straight facts to show you where you can cut, because that's not really, I'm not really smart enough to know that. You do. I don't. But it just seems to me somewhat implausible that with the relatively modest dollars we're asking you to reduce your budget by, that you can't find that amount in the budget. It doesn't seem to me to be a matter of life and death. It shouldn't be where you have to cut staff or programming, especially when we've said to you over and over again, if you get jammed up or you get in a situation where you need funds to do something that's critical to the education of our kids, all you have to do is come back here. And where the Board of Finance has approved a special appropriation, I've been on the board for a while, I haven't ever seen a town vote it down, a town meeting vote it down once the Board of Finance has approved the appropriation. Has anybody here? I've never seen it. So I don't think it's a fear of yours. I think if you work with us cooperatively to try to come up with a budget that we feel the town will respect and pass quickly without a lot of back and forth, if you get jammed up, all you have to do is come back. That seems perfectly reasonable to me. I don't understand why there would be any pushback to that at all.
I think from my side of the house is also perhaps a lack of understanding that I have. Within 1 week of coming forward with over $200,000, there were two goals. If the number is 350, then that's the number, and we'll make the adjustments. We were transparent with our proposal to the Board of Finance. As stated before, we reflected on what you said about coming back, and that's why we made these reductions in the spirit.
Well, I'm not unappreciative of the effort that you've made, and I don't want what we're saying about the amount that we feel it should be reduced to be a criticism of your efforts. You're trying to run a school system, and we appreciate that, and you do a fine job of it. We would like to look at a broader picture and be able to go to the town and say, look, we've done our job. We've reduced the budgets, respective budgets, by a not insignificant amount, but by an amount that makes things a little bit tough on everybody. And we're trying to do the best for all concerned: the school system, the town departments, and for the citizen taxpayers. And that's the framework that we're working in. It's a question of balance, and sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. We do have a mechanism to fix it on this side of the table if we've gotten it wrong. And all you have to do is tell us where we've gotten it wrong in the middle of the school year, and we can step up and try to fix it for you. I think that's the fairest way to deal with this from all concerned, from all sides. But that's just my opinion. Anything further? Any other thoughts? Is there any further discussion among the board members?
I'm good. You have a motion? I do. You want it?
Yeah, let's hear what you have to say.
I see under section 6-4 of the charter, the Board of Finance proposes the following revised budget. The Board of Selectmen shall be reduced $63,821 under health insurance, $10,000 for volunteer recruitment, a total appropriation of $8,939,357. The Board of Ed will be reduced $85,790 in health insurance, $10,000 in unemployment, and $135. Or you came in with another.
Yeah, it's
115.
$90,000 out of insurance, $10,000 under unemployment, and $115,000 out of contracted services.
Contract.
Yeah, contracted services.
And $115,000 out of contracted services. The remaining $135,000 will be from discretionary, non-tuition line items. Total appropriation of $28,838,833. Further, a $50,000 reduction in capital budget for a total appropriation of $39,826,728, a 4.6% overall increase. I hope I got that right.
Can I make one comment?
Well, why don't we get the motion either
Okay.
approved or not?
Sure.
You have a second for the motion?
I'll second. Okay.
Further discussion amongst the members of the board as to the motion?
I just wanted to comment that the $135,000 additional, the Board of Finance cannot dictate where we pull that from.
Well, I would be very cautioned on your end, young lady, that if you come back and tell me you need money for salaries, you're not going to get it through this committee, and you'll live with it. So my advice to you is to take the board's advice at heart. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's my answer to that. And I'm just one vote. I keep
Understood.
saying that.
What's our fund balance?
Available, about roughly 1.2 million.
Further questions, further comments? Yes, Paul?
I'm trying to keep up, I'm sorry. So we're the motion that we're considering is like to approve the budget at that, what he just presented. We're not, I thought we were also considering like the fund balance usage.
No,
That's
we
the
haven't gotten
second
that
half.
far
Yeah,
yet.
that would be
That would be a
expense
second.
side.
That would be a
That's the second
motion.
half of the
We're just doing
equation.
expenses
Yep.
right now.
Just doing expenses, so. Okay.
Yeah, how much it went down, but cut down to.
Good question. Anything further? All in favor of the motion as presented?
Aye.
I guess I would vote yes, but I have a question. My wife is involved in the school system. Do I have to recuse myself from the vote?
No. A decision on recusal is made by the individual who has the question.
Yeah.
Okay? Not by us,
Yeah.
by you. And so if you think you can vote on the matter fairly and without bias, without influence from some other source, then you do not recuse yourself.
Okay.
If any of those questions are in the negative, if you think you might be swayed by something outside of your duty, then you recuse yourself. But it's up to you.
I just wanted to ask that before I got in this vote
Okay.
here.
The decision comes from your head, what you
Okay.
think is right. Okay? Okay, I ask for a vote. Aye.
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 The vote is unanimous. Next matter, Joe, do you have more thoughts?
I do want to request from the Board of Ed that we get a monthly, fund balance usage and transfers. I can do that through a regulation that goes through the treasurer. It has to be, you have to comment on it as the Board of Ed and come back to us. But so it's under section 6-8 C, D, and E of the town charter. The Board of Finance proposes the following regulation effective May 1st, 2024 through the town treasurer. The Board of Ed provide a monthly actual fund expenditures year to date by budget category and a listing of any and all transfers of funds within and between budget categories. And I propose that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I'd like to have some input from our financial folks on the.
So what would the frequency of that?
Monthly.
Monthly?
So when they present their normal monthly
We
update
want budgeted to actual expenses.
and
And any
transfer,
transfers made between line items. And
Within
the,
that
and the amounts of
budget
that.
fund and across the entire budget.
Right.
I mean, it's gonna take you a while to figure out the format, but that's my
And that
request.
starts now for this fiscal year, and then we'll continue on into the next fiscal year.
Correct.
Okay.
That,
And that's a
that
regulation
regulation would have to be
You have to vote on that and then submit it to the town clerk
Yeah, and to them for comment.
and to them.
It's
Okay.
no different than what the Board of Selectmen do for us.
Okay. Fine.
Is that,
Makes sense.
you fellas have any comment further about that?
No?
Any further discussion here? Do people want time to consider the proposal before we act on it? Do you want to wait until our next meeting to act on it? I'm just trying to make sure that we're not running something downhill that,
Well, we can get comments back from the Board of Ed, too.
Yeah, they have a right under the charter to provide feedback to us. So if at our next meeting, they concur or they don't, I mean, the regulation would stand, it's just that you have to provide an opportunity, and it has to go through the selectmen. You have to read the charter, it's all in there.
I guess I need clarification on what needs to go through the selectmen.
It's just how it's worded, that's all. So probably, we can vote on it and then modify it next month if needed, after they comment.
I don't know, I'll take the sense of the board as to whether you want to vote on it first or let the Board of Ed folks have a chance to comment on it.
Well, without voting on it, they can't comment.
Yeah, they can.
Okay.
Why not?
We could,
I mean, I'm serious. I don't understand why they couldn't.
we could,
I mean, you presented a motion, it's been seconded, it's been presented for discussion among the board. We can take comment from
I think
people that were.
what he's saying is they will
motion.
probably need to see a draft version of that regulation to understand the scope of it. And so, in that light, it might not hurt to take a vote on what you consider to be
Yeah.
a draft regulation.
Right.
You were gonna say something? Well, we could table it also.
Yeah, you
We
can
can do
motion,
that.
you can motion to table and it can be
Yeah.
discussed, and then it can be untabled at a later meeting and voted on then.
Yeah, and I can type it up so you can get it and send it out. So that's fine.
Is that okay?
So motion to table?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to table? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is unanimous. Would you please make sure that it's on the agenda for next regular meeting?
Yep.
And Joe, we can count on you to
Yep, I'll type it up. right now.
publish it so that everybody knows what we're talking about.
Okay.
As far as voting on the mill rate, I gave you guys a sheet, should be the third one in your packet.
They approved the capital plan.
Oh yeah, you need to vote on the capital budget. So,
I think they were talking about a $50,000 reduction in the capital budget.
yeah, it was
Joe?
part of the overall, but approving the capital plan has to be voted on itself.
I move to approve. Second.
Any further discussion about the capital projects plan and the reduction of, what did you say, $50,000, Joe?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so the overall budget's $804,868.
It didn't change from last time.
It did?
No, it didn't change from last time.
No, the transfer in changed. It went from 400,000 to 350.
Are we voting?
No, we haven't voted yet.
Okay.
I heard some discussion going on over there.
That's good.
All right, no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion is unanimously passed.
Yeah, so page 3 in your packet lays out some funding options. We're looking at the far right-hand column. Those numbers match the voted on budget from earlier. Still, my recommendation to stay in the 0.75 mil, especially with the understanding that the Board of Ed may be coming back asking for money to pay for future costs. By using fund balance now, you're just then projecting it into fund balance in the future as well when they come back. So by setting the mill rate, it allows you to hold that chunk in case they do come back. And on top of that, with next May being the next biannual budget out of the governor, you never know what to expect out of that. I know 2 years ago there were a lot of talks of cuts of state aid, especially at the ECS level. That got voted down by the legislation and overturned, but I feel like he may have lost that fight but might win the next one. And every cut of a state dollar is just an increase on us. So if we set the mill rate decently this year, it allows us to hedge against the potential for next year, for the next 2 years of leveling the increases and having that fund balance option going forward.
How much excess fund balance do we have? And you know what I mean by that.
We have available to spend. Is that on sheet
Without
one?
dipping into the
We have
bonding
available.
reserve.
We could go as much as 1.25. It was my goal to stay 500,000 or less. That keeps us in the 17% range. 16.67 is the recommended guidance. 500,000 and less keeps us at that guidance and gives us a little padding going forward.
My predilection is to try to keep the mill rate impact at 0.6. I know that that's been a comment from another member. I think that makes some sense. Any further thoughts on?
Well, I was going to, I think I was at 0.65, and then, listening to him, I went up to 0.70 and took 375,000 out of fund balance. So, I think we're all.
Is that what the amount would be?
Yeah,
I think
375
if you
would
went to
make it a 0.7.
0.70.
Yeah.
I know, even though the state is sitting on a boatload of cash, but
But they're not spending it.
they're holding it. And I'm not so sure what they're going to do next
A good
biennium.
chunk of what they're sitting on too is also remaining ARPA dollars that they've got to
That's
appropriate
the
too.
deal,
And again, once those are appropriated and gone, they're gone. And I don't know that they're going to work those into. They have to be appropriated by the end of this calendar year, and I doubt those will be worked into any governor budget for the next 2 years.
I did think the 0.75 was a little high, considering the inflationary factors families in town are going through. And so that's why I went
Well,
down.
once it's enacted, it stays forever.
You don't get it back.
You never get
But
it
the
back.
opposite of that is you don't get the revenue either.
That's right.
So,
But we're holding a $1.2 million, and
we've already taxed everybody.
that we've already taxed anybody. And it seems to me that I know we need to keep some reserve, especially if the school department is going to come back and have at us. But there's certainly enough.
Projecting interest rates to stay where they were, and they shot up in the last 18 months.
Mhm.
I mean, just today I booked $38,000 of interest for this month alone.
Yeah, so
My
our
entire
our
budget was
surplus has been
170.
revenue related.
Yeah.
Our expenses aren't coming in spectacularly lower. I mean, they're low. But
Yeah.
the surpluses are revenue generated, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that the fund balance is because we collected more tax than we should have. A lot of it was either state aid that was budgeted at one number and we received something else. Bank interest came in very high, building permits, a lot of things that, a lot of fees that we collect that are, you throw a dart at the wall trying to guess exactly how many transfer station permits you're going to sell this year. You make an educated guess, and when they come in, you sold 150 more than you planned, that's where this extra revenue came in. So I don't want it to seem like we overtaxed anyone.
Well, it's not a question of overtaxing. It's still the taxpayers' money. It doesn't matter whether
Right.
it comes from their
Right.
tax dollars or whether
it is still a taxpayer
Right.
dollar.
Right.
And we want that to translate into a lower interest rate over a 20-year period or whatever for financing
Yeah.
capital projects, which there's a substantial savings that you'll get in something like that when you come in with a good fund balance. And as a bad fund balance will negatively affect your rating.
Yeah, I mean, a 0.5% to 1% interest rate over 20 years will, for $100,000 of fund balance today, is a drastic swing. You're talking, another $1.5 million you're paying in interest by spending more today and not keeping those reserves.
Other thoughts?
Could split the difference and do 0.65 and take 425 out of fund balance.
That's fine.
I don't know
That's
if you'd
fine
have
with
to
me.
go
I would
that
do
high.
that.
What's that, Brian?
I don't know if you'd have to go that high, honestly.
I don't think you have to take quite that much, but I would agree that
I don't-
0.65.
Yeah, it'd be 420. You're pretty close, Joe.
Yeah,
I'll give you the
We
plus or
used to do
minus.
it for something.
I would do that, Mr. Chairman. I recommend a mill rate of 0.65 and a 420,000 fund balance poll.
Second.
I'll second that.
Yeah,
We have a second. Further discussion?
no, I'll take it.
All in favor?
Aye.
give you a budget flyer as well. There's no numbers in it. I will plug those all in, but it's the same format as last year. If everybody's on board with it, with the trifold, I'll plug everything in and update the write-up. And yep, I'll email it once everything's filled in
Okay.
tomorrow, and then that's like, if you want to preemptively approve that, then we'll, that way we can get it mailed out as well.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If anybody has objection, once it's filled out, and
Yep. Yeah, just let me know. It can be a working document.
please make sure we circulate that objection to everybody on the board
I
so
gotta
that we
look
can,
at it.
so that we can deal with it.
Minutes.
Oh, my God.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Go.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ron, be a nice guy. You drive me home. I can't drive yet.
Yeah.
I have one more surgery on Wednesday.
It's out of your way. So,
Carl, I got him
Just
tonight.
got, okay.
And I'm around the corner.
I know where it is.
Unless they could take me
Go on a
off
walk.
the book.
You're his chauffeur tonight? Ocean recoveries before